feels like generally the NFL or coaches in the NFL have gotten better in the last, 20 years at adapting what they do to the individual players that they have in the system and tweaking it slightly rather than just plugging Michael Vick into a West Coast offense and saying every now and again you can, scramble or run a bootleg, but basically you're running what Joe Montana ran and good luck with it. Now I think we're better than that. Fields, I think, is being let down by that. But how much of that goes on even when we're sort of not aware it's happening? Like, how much is this Mike McDaniel offense adapting around Tua, who is, an unusual type of quarterback in terms of what he does well, what he doesn't do well? He's got a very specific skill set, and right now it's absolutely cooking on gas, that combination.
Well, I think the Dolphins are a really cool case study where you can see the idea of what Mike McDaniel values, and to me he values speed. He essentially is a collector of speed.
Yes.
And so when you put that on full display with the way that they're scheming up and using, to your point, Tua's unique skill set to take advantage of that, it's like this new secret sauce that no one's ever thought of, and it's really fun to watch, and it's taking the league by storm for 3 weeks. Now will it last? Will it travel? Will it be able to do that in bad weather? We'll all find out together. But it's sure as hell fun to watch. But it's a perfect, for me, a nice picture of what it looks like when you get all the ingredients that you want to cook your special stew. Like, you value speed. Well, let's go get every single fast person we can in the league.
Al Davis, man.
Them. And then, it's just really, it's fascinating to see. I love watching. I would turn on their film every single week just to see the new wrinkles that they use.
How would you describe some of those wrinkles? I mean, I was making a joke the other day. They have Tyreek Hill lined up at tight end. When you used to do that in Madden, it was a cheat. It was like it broke the game of Madden when you put a wide receiver at tight end, and people would get mad at you. Like, if you play it online, it's like, oh, you're cheating. You're cheesing the game. And it's like Mike McDaniel's using Madden cheat codes in real life by moving Tyreek Hill around and using short motion opposite of what you normally do. What are some of those wrinkles that you're seeing that Miami's taking advantage of?
Well, I mean, that short motion that you're talking about, that should be, and already is, people have already used it just already in the NFL season. They've hijacked it or tried to hijack it, but it will be across all levels of football. There are people practicing that tonight for Pop Warner, trying to get that in. And the thing, when you look across the other people in the league, like I saw the Niners use it this past weekend, Green Bay used it this past weekend, but when they don't have Tyreek Hill doing it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look the same. When you have your backup tight end doing it, it's not the same. Now, it's not always Tyreek Hill, but it's that idea of pure speed. And the thing that I love with McDaniel is he has got those guys believing. They are going 1,000 miles an hour in that motion. You look across, just close your eyes the next time you're watching a game, open them up and say, how hard is this guy running on this motion? Is he going 1,000 miles an hour? Because he's not. And part of that is coaching. It's the accountability. It's the demand. It's him teaching, hey, the reason we're doing this is not so you get more steps or me run you into the ground. It's because this is your skill set for our team. We need you to go 100 miles an hour to be able to create this space to then get you all these touches and then open other people up. And it's just fascinating to see, man. It's really cool.
It's also like, it's a much easier sell to the wide receiver to be like, hey, sprint your guts out for 5 yards rather than I need you to move 25 yards from one side to the other side at full speed and then break into your, route over the course of the play. Like, just from a selfish wide receiver point of view, it's a lot easier to buy, hey, I only need to run really hard for 5 yards before we start this play.
Yeah, and I mean, they're already using it like like arena football. Like, it's a running start, and it's awesome. And it kind of makes you shake your head to go like,
how did
why didn't I think of that before?
Right. So even just using motion, I mean, so the battle between football guys and nerds, it's the nerds will research something and say motion has higher EPA, run more motion, and it's like, the football guys are like, oh, you don't know football, you don't know what I'm setting up and all that stuff. But it does sound overly simplistic. But why don't teams use more motion? Just generally, motion in general, even before you get into the specifics. Where do you see that balance? It seems like there are certain things offensive play callers can use, just using more play action, just using more motion. Why are some offensive coordinators unable to do that and make that adjustment when it seems like some of these things are such cheat codes?
I can definitely tell you that it certainly can go to the far side too much really quickly. And so I've been in offenses where I've asked for less motion. And the reason why is because if you're making pass protection declarations, and so we're pointing out who the line's going to, and then we motion and they adjust, well, am I snapping the ball in the motion, or are we re-declaring? Am I now hot off someone else? And so making sense of that communication can be a real issue in pass protection and the run game. And so you have to have these like baked in rules. Essentially, you have to have a system built to handle those kinds of motions. So it can be very, I think you can get away with it a little bit easier if you're in the wide zone world, because it's less about, hey, I'm going to this guy or this combination, and more, hey, I'm taking these steps. Am I covered, uncovered? We're running to space. So it can be kind of how you're connected to the system. But I certainly have been places where I'm like, hey, man, let's just go Peyton Manning old school, 2x2, 3x1. Let me see what the defense is.
They never
and get into it. And sometimes you can see a good example for like evidence of this is sometimes when a quarterback is struggling, you'll see teams go 2 minute, like in the middle of a quarter, and be like, oh, we just need to get into a rhythm. Well, things are cleaner. You're running your base stuff. There is no additional motion part of it. But if you are going to scheme people up and have like run it runs where there are no checks and it's good versus everything, well then let's shift motion, double motion. I think that's the other thing you see now. You see people shift motion now all the time. And it's just baked into the process, where back in the day, you go into the wide receiver room and say, hey, we're going to have you shift across the formation, and then we're going to have you run this motion behind the quarterback. We're going to need you to run 50 yards, and you're just our runoff. Yeah. Good luck with that. Try that a couple times at practice, and then we'll see you on Sunday. That's just not going to fly. That's going to piss everybody off. But now it's baked into these systems, and they can see the advantage of what it does to the run game, to the play action world, to your system. But you have to be able to take advantage of it, and it has to be for a reason. I think that's the thing. If coordinators and teachers and coaches go into these meetings and explain why we're doing it, and then it works and you see it, and then everybody's bought in. But if we're just running to run, or we're running and we're screwing up the lines blocking, well, then we've got all sorts of issues. That's a fast way to piss off centers.
Do you have a favorite run game? I mean, or run style or system? To me, it's fascinating to me that Peyton always ran that super wide zone, and it felt like this was the run game that needed to be attached to one of the best quarterbacks of all time, because he loved to run play action off of it. And then you have a Brady that was more gap run scheme, and they'd run that little over route to Gronk behind him and everything. So it's just interesting to me that these quarterbacks, they're going to pass the ball more than they're going to run, but they had completely different run schemes. Do you have a favorite, or one that you think works best with a high level quarterback?
Not really. I mean, at the league level, I don't think it necessarily matters. I can tell you for sure at the lower levels, I love coaching gap runs. They're way easier to coach.
Oh, yeah.
I think they're more fun for the offensive linemen too, to just be able to get double teams and those types of things and move people at the line of scrimmage. I think the wide zone world is it's really difficult to coach at a high level, at lower levels. And so trying to do that, unless you really know where the bones are buried, is going to be really difficult. But man, the downhill run game of a gap run is pretty sweet.
Are we reaching this strange world now where people like Patrick Mahomes and a handful of other quarterbacks in the NFL have changed the grading curve so much that, like, what you're trying to achieve when you go get a new quarterback, when you draft Bryce Young #1 overall, when you go after a Caleb Williams or whatever in the draft, the bar has been set so high now that there are these guys who can just invalidate almost every rule you thought you knew. Like some of the things that Patrick Mahomes does every single week, and he's not alone. I mean, Josh Allen, capable of it. Justin Herbert, we talked about before we went on the show. Like, they're capable of doing such ridiculous things, and they're doing them regularly, almost without the downside that Brett Favre brought to it, right? Brett Favre did a lot of this stuff as well, but it always came with, a higher than ideal number of, Brett, no, too far. Have we reached this level now where these guys have just changed where the standard is?
Probably. I think the other part that is easy, there's probably some sort of bias that I can't recall, like recency bias element of it. But there have always been a separation of guys at the quarterback position at the highest level. It's just the position those guys playing it didn't do the things that the guys at the top now are doing, as far as the playmaking, the creativity, the out of structure, and the arm strength.
But I think
nobody can close their eyes and think, man, if Peyton Manning was playing nowadays, he'd be out there looking like Patrick Mahomes or Caleb Williams. It's just not the way that the position was played. But there are so many better athletes playing quarterback. That's the thing. Like growing up, the best athlete plays quarterback now. or that was never the case 20 years ago. You know, you're playing tailback, you're playing middle linebacker. But those guys are all the quarterback. And so now you've got this great athleticism at the position, and you kind of layer that into how offense has changed and the roles have become a little bit more quarterback friendly. And now you do have these opportunities for these guys to go out there and make these crazy plays seemingly all the time. But yeah, it's not necessarily fair to lump everyone into the category of what those top guys are able to do just athletically. It's you know, not everybody can do that.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing that's sort of interesting. It's not that a guy like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady wouldn't still be a great quarterback if they came into the NFL tomorrow. You know, those guys are clearly amazing and arguably the two greatest quarterbacks that have ever played. But I kind of always felt for the last, you know, however many years that eventually a guy that could do what they could do with athleticism would automatically add something to the table, right? They're bringing something that Tom Brady and Peyton Manning can't do on top of what they're already great at, this sort of the pocket passing, cerebral part of the game. It feels like we finally found a collection of those players now. For, you know, Rodgers maybe was one of those guys for a while, but now that's almost the standard that you need to be the great quarterback now. All these guys are mobile. All these guys can make plays out of structure in a way that Brady and Manning didn't ever really do or didn't have the capacity to do. So it's almost like we've reached just this new level. Like the standard has gone up higher because we've tapped into this extra layer of potential that was never quite there for those guys.
I mean, I think that's fair. I think the other thing to maybe mention is the game has evolved to allow those things to be more prominent. And what I mean by that is as it gets more spready, the game is spread out where you're allowed to make those plays a little bit more consistently. Back in the day, you know, when it's more in the pocket, everything is, you know, timing rhythm, where now it's a little bit more air raidy. We're running to space where you know, the creative element is baked into the process, where I think Aaron was just world class before it was common to kind of create out of structure and have those crazy arm angles, and he had the arm strength and the pinpoint accuracy, and he didn't turn the ball over. Yeah. Like he was you know, ahead of the curve on so many of those things, where now all those guys watched Aaron. You know, that's the type of thing that they're trying to replicate, and you just see the game continue to grow and evolve in that same kind of lane.